panel is a little bit late. In Leipzig we have media freedom, but we have no caps. That's really a problem, and we also have a problem with the traffic. But now we start. Dear guests and audience, welcome to this panel about media capture in East Europe. My name is Lutz Kinkel. I'm the managing director of the European Center for Press and Media Freedom, which is located in Leipzig. I will guide you now through the following 60 minutes. I think we have 50 minutes all in all, as I heard already from Vera Jourova's cabinet. First of all, I would like to inform you about the schedule. My plan is to have a talk of about 40 minutes. Afterwards, I'd like to deal with questions from the floor. So if you have questions, you might take notes if you want to, and then submit them later. Secondly, I want to walk through three different aspects of media capture. The first aspect is the dystopian situation that we face after a full-blown media capture. So the first aspect is the power of the narrative. You could also say the power of propaganda. The second aspect is, and now we come to the operational level, how does media capture actually function? So what kind of instruments do governments use to destroy independent media? The third aspect of our discussion is rather simple. I will ask Commissioner Vera Jourova how we can restore paradise in the EU and how the Commission will do that. So that's the easy part, so to say. What we have on our plate is, again, the power of the narrative. How does media capture take place? And what are the political possibilities of the European Commission to intervene? Let me introduce my guests. Oh, the first paper is flying away, but it's already done with the first paper. I already mentioned her. Vera Jourova is Vice President of the European Commission. Her working fields are values, transparency, rule of law, disinformation, and media pluralism. Vera Jourova grew up in the Czech Republic. She knows from her own experience what it means to be forced to live in the sceneries of state propaganda. Welcome, Vera Jourova. We have with us Peter Dvořák. I hope I pronounce it halfway okay. He's also Czech. He is the Director General of the public TV station CT and Vice President of the European Broadcasting Union. From what we perceived also at the ECPMF, Peter Dvořák was on the hit list of the former government, led by Andrej Babiš. I hope he will tell us a little bit more about his struggle in the past years. Welcome, Peter Dvořák. Piotr Stasinski, we know each other already from, well, a long interview that I had with him. This is why I call him Piotr and he calls me Lutz. He was strictly forbidding me to say the following sentence that I wrote. Please allow me to say that he's a legend of Polish journalism. But I take my freedom as a journalist and my freedom of expression to say that. In the 80s, he was arrested for his journalistic work, accused of committing political crimes in Poland, and since 1993, he's with the Gazeta Wyborcza, the largest liberal daily in Poland. Since 2001, he's deputy editor-in-chief. So welcome, Piotr Stasinski.
Welcome. I wrote my Nobel Prize speech in case I get one.
Okay, perfect. Let me start the discussion with the current situation to get a feeling of what it means if the state is controlling the public sphere. You all know the Russian narrative, why the invasion of Ukraine is allegedly legitimate. This narrative is the claim that the country is governed by Nazis. This is obviously not the truth, but the narrative is repeated so often in Russia that obviously also large parts of the population believe in it. This is at least one part, one aspect of the explanation why there is no mass resilience and no mass protest against Putin's politics in Russia. Vice President Jourova, did we all underestimate the effects of full-blown state propaganda? Is it possible to literally brainwash people so that they believe in the state's policies if you control the majority of the media landscape?
Yes, good evening. Thank you for inviting me to this amazing place. And I forgot the question. No, don't worry. What we see now in Russia is a stark reminder of the fact that it is possible to brainwash the big mass of people. And especially when you do it over decades, which was happening in Russia, and when you try to understand a little bit the mentality and the societal setup, according to the experts, for the Russian people, the truth is what the Tsar says. Now it's President Putin. He is the one who sets the truth. And he has the army of so-called media to deliver this message, what he believes is true, to the people. And what we see now in Russia is total darkness. The people cannot read and hear any facts, only the pro-Kremlin or Kremlin propaganda. The penalty of 15 years in prison, of course, it's something which is unprecedented, something which we did not experience in the communist regimes, and I unfortunately remember the regime quite well. So this is possible, and it is also based on the slogan, I believe, that this is used, that 100 times repeated lie becomes the truth. And this is something which was also tested on European citizens successfully. Yep. Because since 2014, according to our data, the intensity of Russian propaganda on European territory was increasing. Big part of the narratives were covering Ukraine. So Russia was in a very experienced way preparing the ground in European society, preparing the ground for the future invasion. They believe that there will be higher acceptance from the side of European people that they are attacking, that they are defending themselves against the Nazi regime in Ukraine. And it did not materialize, it didn't happen, because after the invasion, even after several years of this massage, the surveys showed that the people reacted in the proper way in all the member states. The numbers of those who used to believe the Russian narratives dropped radically down. But this is not the end of the story. And now I'm afraid that with increased tension in European Union, in our member states, with increased prices of food, energy, with increased tiredness of the war, which we already see in our society, it will be the case that the Russian narratives will again be gaining ground. But it sounds pessimistic, but we do a lot of things against that, so maybe in the next question.
Mr. Dvorak, could you please describe this, what Vera Jourova already mentioned, so the influx of the Russian propaganda into the Czech society a little bit more concrete and probably with examples. What does that mean for the public sphere in Czech?
Hello everybody, thanks for inviting me. We are used to the Russian propaganda since a long time. And if I take like a close past, it started already with the immigration crisis. Then we heard a lot of disinformations during the COVID pandemic. And now we hear a lot of disinformation regarding the war in Ukraine. And why it's so widely spread? It has, I believe, two reasons. One reason is the technical reason, because with the growth of social media, with the growth of possibilities of single people to share information between each other, much easier than in the past, and with the speed how the disinformation can be spread around, this enables even a smaller media or smaller groups on social media to spread this disinformation between people. And second reason is the political reason, because the spread of disinformation became also a political agenda of some political groups. And in case of the Czech Republic, there is the extremist party called SPD, and they use very often the disinformation in their political campaign. Be it informations about Ukraine currently, be it information about immigrants or about refugees, be it the information about the way how the COVID should be treated. And about Ms. Jourova as well, yeah, exactly. So those two reasons, I believe, are the main reasons why the disinformation is spread between the society. What happened in Czech Republic when on 24th of February Putin invaded Ukraine? On 25th of February, 8 disinformation websites were suspended from the Czech internet. And that was one of the attempts of the current government to fight back the disinformation wave. And I believe this was pretty successful. They didn't prevent them to do it again, but at least they made their life a little bit harder. What can we do as a public service institution? I believe that the best way how to fight the disinformation is do our work in a proper way. So to inform the people, give them the people balanced and unbiased information. Czech TV, by the way, is the most trusted media in the Czech Republic. We have a trust of about 60% of the people. If I compare it to the commercial TVs, the two other commercial groups, one is 23%, the second one is 16%. So we are by far the most trusted information source. And what we have to do is to occupy, to get the proper information to the people as much as we can. And we can use our own strength, but what we can do is also to use our unity within Europe, within European Broadcasting Union, to share the knowledge, share the information, share the teams. I just give you one example. Czech TV was one of 3 televisions together with the France TV and together with the Ukrainian TV, who did the first official interview with the President Zelensky. And this interview was used by 120 other media organizations who broadcasted it on 260 different channels. So this is something we have to do, we have to inform, and if we inform in a proper way, and if we use all the channels we can, we are not only TV, we are active on internet, we have our social media platforms. So if we do it in a proper way, this is the best way how to fight it.
Piotr, in Poland, it's not only the problem of Russian propaganda that you probably perceive, but it's also the problem of state propaganda of the peace government. The peace government is also using the label Nazi for any kind of opponent and characterizing these people as Nazis. Why does this label still work so well in Eastern Europe, although it's obviously used inflationary?
I would say that it doesn't work well. Mm-hmm. It is being used from time to time, especially by the pro-peace, pro-law and justice party media. Law and Justice, by the way, is the name of this party, and it's caricature. No law and no justice. So what we have in Poland, there's a problem of monopoly in public service broadcasting media. So these are different things, and the monopoly is the answer. If you have a regional monopoly or social monopoly, in the sense that people who are less educated and have the access only to the government or state-controlled public service broadcasting media, you have the narrative that you're talking about. You have the power of propaganda, which is virtually unlimited. So as I see it, the monopoly is one of the answers. And in Poland, for instance, is completely different than in your country. And I mean to Petr Dvořák, it's completely different because the public service broadcasting media, the largest in terms of audience, were taken over by the government, by the Peace Party, right at the beginning of when they took power in the late 2015. And everything there is to serve the governors. You know, you may know the famous saying, and I think that it's the simplest definition of journalism, or the media mission in general, that the press, the media, have to serve the governed, not the governors. If press and media serve the governors, this is propaganda, it is not journalism. And this is what we have in Poland in public broadcasting media.
Vice President, generally speaking, and when we listened to them both, would you say we are in an information war? Would you use this term?
Yes, indeed, we are in an information war. Obviously, with the start of the war, already before that, we were discussing in the Commission whether we are not too naive to be passive and just to watch the Russian media, which have been established to spread propaganda, because it was the purpose for establishing Russia Today or Sputnik, whether we should not be tougher against them and whether we should not take strong decisions. And we did it. And we put on, I think it was the third package of the sanctions, the sanctioning the Russia Today and Sputnik. 2 days ago, the states adopted the decision to ban some other, 3 other channels. Also, the member states have the competence to take action against the media which are endangering the national security. The states do not have to wait for the Commission or for the Union to take decisions or to adopt the laws. And obviously we are in the information war and we have to organize things differently because this is not normal situation. While in COVID time disinformation was used as a poison, because there was a lot of harmful content which was endangering health and lives of people. Now the disinformation and propaganda is used as a weapon. And I would even say weapons of mass destruction when they use for spreading the platforms which can deliver the disinformation to millions of people within a second. So this is appropriate to say that we are in the information war, but at the same time, we should not be hysterical, and by fighting this battle, we must not destroy the holy principle of the freedom of speech and access to information.
Mr. Dvořák, we know that when a populist government is governing, that the first attack always goes to public service media, because the government has, as the regulator, a certain influence on public service media. You went through this process, and as I said, you were on the hit list of the former government of Andrej Babiš. Could you tell us a little bit about this period of time and how you managed to get out of the struggle or survive the struggle?
Before I start to explain what happened in the last 4 years, I just explain you how the governance of the Czech TV works in the Czech Republic. The Czech TV is the public service media. It has its own council, which consists of 15 people. Those people are voted by the Czech parliament, by the Chamber of Deputies, and they are proposed to the parliament by some independent organizations who basically take them as their representatives on that council. This looks very obvious, this looks very independent. The truth is that the political parties already got used to pick up their candidates first, and then they told the candidates to find some organization just as a cover to get them into the elections, and then they elect them on behalf of those political parties. And they used to have different powers, to share the powers according to the powers in the parliament. This has changed after the former Prime Minister Babiš came to the power, and I believe he was not the main, in quotes, enemy of the public service media. But he got together in some informal coalition with two political parties, with this extreme SPD and with the communists, who were not part of the government, but they backed the ANO, the political movement, and they had also a backing of the presidential office of our President Zeman. And they started to pick up the people who became members of my board, who were very critical to the Czech TV, who were very critical to the news of the Czech TV, and sometimes who didn't even believe in the principles of the public service media as such. Basically, they would love to have the same situation like in Poland. And they managed to put in place approximately 8 out of 15 members of the council, who immediately after they were elected, they started to shoot at me, they started to look for different small problems, they misused the complaints of their friends, they started to complain about our news, they started to complain about some journalists, about some reporters, about our investigative teams, and they tried hard to get rid of me, mainly because they felt that if they replace me with somebody who will work in their favor, the first thing he will do or she do is to replace the head of news, who will get the task, the new one, to get rid of those critical journalists which were in place. This plan didn't happen just because they didn't have enough votes for a dismissal of the CEO, because they needed 10 votes for that, but they tried hard. And they didn't manage to finalize this plan until the last elections. And after the last elections, which happened last fall, the new government, which is in place, they at least propose that they will support the public service media in the country, and they will look after their independence. They also promise to take care of our financing in the medium terms. So now we are in better situations, but I have to admit, last 2 years that was a nightmare, and I have to thank Ms. Jourova, because we had plenty of discussions together, and she helped me together with my colleagues from other countries, together with my colleagues from EBU, even from Germany, who basically sent complaints to the Czech government trying to prevent to do it.
You mentioned the president already, Mr. Zeman. I want to add just a famous anecdote, which is also an infamous anecdote, because he gave once a press conference. I don't know if you know this picture, and there he was sitting, and he was carrying a rifle, an AK-47, and there was inscripted 4 journalists. Yeah, so this was just a toy, not a real gun, but a toy. But the message was obviously that journalists should be shot by a Russian rifle.
There was something before that, because Mr. Zeman visited Mr. Putin, and when they were leaving from the official place where they gave the interview, Mr. Zeman said to Mr. Putin, the journalists should be
eliminated.
Eliminated.
There are too many of them.
Eliminated.
And Mr. Putin said it's not necessary to eliminate it, just make the number a little bit lower.
And then this story came with the Kalashnikov. Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's Mr. Zeman. I'm glad you made it with the public service media in Czech. It's over in Poland, as you said. Well, this is already a PR and propaganda machine for
they just didn't need Kalashnikovs for that. I mean, just they shut them up.
Yeah. In Poland, the government is intervening into the private market very much. And the Gazeta Wyborcza you work for is famous of being sued and sued and sued and sued and sued. And they are not sued by private persons, but they are sued. You are sued by ministries, by people from the government, companies that are close to the government, and so on and so forth. If I'm rightly informed, you have now something like 70 lawsuits going on against the Gazeta Wyborcza.
Nearly 100, because the number is growing each week. And we have about 94, 95 and growing. But the problem is that in many of them, and I'm talking only about the lawsuits initiated by the political figures, political agencies, the government institutions, like ministries, and the state-controlled companies. So we have we nearly all of them we can call SLAPPs, because SLAPPs is, it's the strategic lawsuit against public participation. Nearly all of them are SLAPPs because the reason and the objective of those suits, the lawsuits, is to shut us up, to harass us, to make us, to tire us, in a sense that journalists, editors, and our lawyers, a very small bunch of lawyers who have to fight them all the time. And it needs time and effort and money and a lot of work to defend ourselves. And still, we win a lot of lawsuits. But there is a cost of it. It's cost to it. And we only win because in Poland, still judiciary is in 80% independent. And Ms. Jourova knows well how the government is trying to control, intimidate, infringe judiciary independence in Poland. There's about 10,000 Polish judges. And now 2,000 are loyalists to the government, and it's growing step by step. So when we lose a lawsuit, usually because of the recently nominated judge by the political dealings, through the political dealings. So this is the problem, which is the in relation of media, a law and judiciary, and the government and the state.
Vice President Jourova, we heard now already a lot of examples how governments can intervene into public service media and also into the private market. There are far more. You know them all. And it's not that the European Commission is not reacting. On the contrary, we have the draft of the Anti-SLAPP directive, we have the whistleblower directive, we have the recommendation for the protection of journalists, we have the upcoming Media Freedom Act, and so on and so forth. one of the major issues is how to get this on the ground, how to implement this on national level, how to make sure that the European governments really follow also the norms and the advice and the values that we have in Europe. How can we ensure that?
We need to have good partners for that. When I say we, I mean us who represent the EU. Good partners are the governments who are on the same page when it comes to the values, like freedom of speech and democracy and the rule of law. When it is not the case, then we see in the member state, like you spoke about Poland, that the principle which appears in some states is that the winner after the elections takes all. Judiciary, media, academia, and civil society, especially those organizations who protect and support the minorities. That is always the same scenario. By the way, we saw similar things in the United States under Trump, yeah? So this is not only European matter. So how to do that? We, of course, need the governments and the national parliaments to to adopt, because this is always collective work, adoption of the legislation or non-binding rules which we need to see implemented on the ground. And it's always a heavy task to push forward the legislation which goes against those limitations which I mentioned. On anti-SLAPP, we are at the beginning of the process. I proposed the legislation, and the problem is that the core thing in this anti-SLAPP legislation is that an independent judge takes the case, and the first thing he or she does is to check whether this is abusive litigation or whether there is some justification for the case. And in the moment or at the situation when we do not have independent judges in the state, and if those who lodge these complaints are the persons or entities connected with the state, then you have a problem. And I think that I wonder how, for instance, Poland will approach, or what the position of Poland will be on our anti-SLAPP rules, because this is about protection of journalists and human rights defenders against the abuse of justice. And when in Poland there are those two factors, the attacks against journalists and the problematic judiciary system. So we will see.
Do you think Viktor Orban, the Chancellor of Hungary, is a negative role model for governments seeking control of the media landscape?
Definitely he is. I will not be diplomatic, yeah? And Viktor Orban is used to that from my side. I think that Viktor Orban set a different governance structure and system in Hungary, different from what we would like to see in the member states, because the state, the truly democratic state, is governed by the powers which respect the limitation of their powers. Those who win the elections must not invade into those spheres, which must remain independent. And all the spheres which I named before were already somehow affected by the leading power, by Fidesz party, by Viktor Orban's people. And so, of course, this is not the role model for the rest of Europe, and I am personally worried about the position of Viktor Orban now during the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Because, of course, I have full understanding for the leaders who say we cannot afford immediate ban of import of oil. Of course, there are difficulties in some countries. But to name among the enemies or adversaries Volodymyr Zelensky, it shows that he is simply standing on the other side. And so I cannot help it, but this is going too far. On the other hand, we have to recognize Viktor Orbán as the winner of the elections. And here comes the question how fair the elections were.
Thank you for these very clear and outspoken words. I would like to open now to the questions from the floor. We don't have that much time, but if you have a question or two, please come up with it. I don't know, is there any helper that has probably a microphone also to get to you? Anyone having a question? If not, I have 100 questions still. Yeah, please. Please say your name and your function if possible.
Yes, I will. My name is Jochen Fasko. I'm the head of the State Media Authority of Thuringia. And first I wanted to ask about the DSA, and that it's necessary that the DSA is very far away from state influence, but this is not so, it's important. But I have another question, because Ms. Jourova, you said we are in an information war. And what can we do, what would you suggest to do, 1, 2, 3 things, to weapon our citizens, to weapon the kids, but the parents and the grandparents, mostly the older ones maybe, they have to understand what happens with them, how are they influenced, and what would you suggest to do from the EU to improve the media literacy?
Yes, we always speak about it, and we are not doing enough. Because when I describe what we do against disinformation, these are all very short-term measures, something which is being done now. And I always add, and we need to do more to make our society more resilient against the impact of disinformation. So here comes especially the need to be much better in education and in preparing the young generation. I think that our member states, most of them, are already investing in media literacy and digital literacy. With the older generation, to be honest, I don't have a good answer. And it's a pity, because this is, I think, very serious societal problem, because many seniors are living in high level of uncertainty. The people fear about what's happening now, what will happen, and that's why they are so, and many of them live alone, and they do not have anyone to speak about their fears. That's why they are such easy targets for the disinformers, and that's why they also then express their fears in how they elect, how they vote. So what's the advice? I think that we should not underestimate these societal aspects. But I think we have to embed this building resilience of the society among one of our priorities, because this is essential. When we look at how disinformation system works, we are looking at the producers, at the channels, and at the targets. The producers are more or less now clear in the war. They are quite well identifiable. Of course, not all the proxies of Kremlin which spread disinformation in our member states are easy to identify. As for the channels, we work a lot with the digital platforms, which are the main highways for massive spreading. And we have some agreements with them, with the big platforms. And in mid-June, I will present the new code of practice against disinformation, which is also involving advertising industry, so that not to feed the disinformation systems and channels. And we have now a special agreement with the digital platforms that they have to do more against Russian propaganda, no mercy. When they see manifestly clear lies, something like Ukrainians are Nazis, it has to be removed. And what we expect from them to do this job in all 24 languages of EU member states, because what we see is that they are neglecting, especially the east of Europe, and I'm pushing hard. This is the first situation, and it is connected with your question whether we are in the information war. That's the first situation when I am telling the platforms, choose the side where you stand. Don't be neutral. You have to proactively help us to help Ukraine to win the war. So these are the channels. I don't want to speak too long, but we are sometimes forgetting about the targets, the people who are easy victims. Easy victims are the people who create the crowd, not so much individual people. But I think that the digital companies, the digital platforms especially, they did their best to create the crowd, which is easy to manipulate, which is easy to sell the goods to, and so it's also connected with the business model, but I will stop here.
Another question, I will take one question from the floor. The man sitting there with the blue shirt, please.
My name is Andreas Hermann. I'm the head of an independent radio station in the border triangle between Poland, Germany, and Czech. I think it's quite funny because Peter Dvořák mentioned some difficulties with the Babiš government in coalition with the SPD and the communists. But Commissioner Jourova, you're also from the ANO party. Has it improved the relationship to Peter Dvořák? Have you overcome the difficulties from the past? How is it today?
You know, the commissioner, it's a strange kind of animal. Because when you join the commission, you are not forced by the rules to leave the party. But you have to stop the activities. You have simply to stop any kind of campaigning or helping your own party. So it requires total passivity or neutrality, which I respect and I obey. This is not washing hands, this is just a description of how we have to behave in this position. So I didn't leave the party. I was thinking about it twice, that I will have to, because it was morally impossible to continue, in my view. And it was always after the elections, when there were some strange talks between the ANO party and the SPD, which Petr Dvořák mentioned, some ideas that SPD could be invited to create the governing coalition. For me, this was the red line. And it was the moment when I would have to jump out of my perfect neutrality and leave the party. But it didn't happen. So in 2.5 years' time, I will come back and I will say to my party, I am back, and either I will be able to continue or the situation will change so radically that I will have to leave. But now I live in my kind of splendid isolation or neutrality.
The splendid isolation. Okay, I would like to make a last question, and I would like you also to answer briefly. Sorry? I said only 2 questions, so we have to come to the end, unfortunately. My last question would be.
Somebody who would not fall asleep if he cannot.
Is that true? He cannot fall asleep tonight? Okay, then please ask your question.
I'm a student, and next to the influence by governments in media. We also have a massive impact of oligarchs in Central Eastern Europe. So how to deal with that and to create a free journalism next to government's influence and to the impact of oligarchs.
So there are different ways, but I believe that there are two main ways how to keep the public media independent. There is the political way. It means to create such a legal environment which prevents to take over the governing bodies of the public service media, and to enable to vote into those controlling bodies those people who may not agree with the management all the time, but who defend the values of the public service media. So that's the first thing. And second way how to make the public service media independent is to care for the proper financing. Because if they are properly financed, if they are financed in a way that they deliver the public value which the public expects, and if the financing is not controlled and decided by the politicians all the time, and it's only on their decision if they allow to do the public service in such a quality and in such a such a spread the people are used to and the people like, then those two principles is just enough. And I have to say I'm in a position right now that for the first part, the current coalition, they try to define those principles to change the way how the members of the Council of the Czech TV are voted, because they would like to invite also the members of the Senate, so the whole parliament, not only the Chamber of Deputies, but also the Senate, will have a chance to vote for those members, which will enable for those people to be more independent. And just now I'm trying to push also to care for the second part, to build principles of the future financing of my institutions. There I'm not quite as successful until now, but I can understand the reasons. We are in the war.
One sentence: we are now preparing the Media Freedom Act, which should help to decrease the political and economic pressures on media. So we will see whether we will manage in July. Thank you.
We take you by the word, Commissioner Jourova, and thank you for this optimistic note at the end of the panel. Thank you for your attention, and have a good evening. Thank you.